Let's bring in Ross Smith, the Director of Emergency Preparedness and Response at the UN World Food Program. Ross, you've described the hunger crisis in Gaza as a disaster and unlike anything we've seen in this century. Help put this into perspective for us. What is your team there on the ground seeing that perhaps cameras aren't even capturing?
Yeah, thanks, Anna, and thanks for having me on. I mean, we're seeing an absolutely devastating situation on the ground, and I think you see some of those images in the top of your program here, but you see others elsewhere with severely emaciated children, malnourished children, and adults and women, and this is a completely avoidable situation. These are famine-like conditions that are simply due to lack of access to food, and we have all means necessary to alleviate the situation, but we just do not have the access that we need to do it.
In fact, the World Food Program has said it has enough aid stockpiled outside of Gaza to supply the entire population for 2 months. But less than 8% of aid trucks have actually made it to Gaza in the nearly 10 weeks since that blockade by Israel was lifted. So you have the aid people need. It's just a matter of reaching them.
Yeah, so the issue, and prior to Sunday, we were getting approximately 10% of what's required to meet the needs in Gaza. We were getting that inside Gaza. Since Sunday, we've had these humanitarian pauses. The reporter was mentioning this, a little bit better, but still less than half of what we're requesting. We are actually getting allowed. We're getting approval and clearance to move inside Gaza. So there are many, many delays in approvals process, the clearance process that allow us to move inside Gaza. And I think here what we're calling for is a much faster facilitation of this and cooperation from the armed forces on the ground. In addition, we are seeing everyday incidents of casualties associated with humanitarian relief distributions and convoys, and that is unacceptable. We need to provide a safer environment for civilians to access us and for us to access them.
Where is the, major point of delay? What is causing that delay you speak of that won't allow food to really surge in at such a greater level as Israel's now, created these temporary pauses in military action? There's been the airdrops, but yet it still seems like it's just a trickle getting through.
Well, what we need is actually, as I said, the faster approvals and clearances so we can move it quickly. We can surge in. We do have all of the capacity to do it. We have the food sitting right at the border, but we are not being allowed to move at the scale that we need every single day. So, for example, we're only getting 50% of the trucks that we've requested in since Sunday. And this is simply unacceptable when we can see the devastating situation on the ground in front of us.
Even as recently as this morning, Israel's accused Hamas of intercepting food deliveries. We've been seeing reports of looting. So what's happening with all of that, and what can be done to prevent it?
What we are seeing is anything that we move ourselves or our partners into inside Gaza, we are seeing communities looting off the trucks. So this is not criminal gangs, or this is not Hamas. This is simply desperate civilians who haven't had enough to eat or have enough humanitarian relief. So they're looting off the trucks. We're not able to reach our final distribution points and distribute them in a proper manner until we're able to surge in enough and get enough relief into the communities. We're not going to be able to alleviate that. So that's really what we're seeing. That is the main consequence of insufficient support to the civilians in Gaza.
Wow, it's overwhelming to see these images and to hear what's happening there. Ross Smith of the World Food Program, thank you for shining light. Thank you for all of your efforts. We appreciate you, and thank you for your time.